Hello guys, how you doing? Luna here with a new video. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm here to talk about two of my favorite albums of all time, two of the greatest and most important Britpop albums ever released, Definitely Maybe and What's the Story Morning Glory, released by the band Oasis. The reason why I'm going to talk about these albums today is mainly because I uploaded a video a few days ago where I was reviewing the discography of the band, their influence on the music scene and their performance style, and honestly, I have to say that I wasn't all that positive in a lot of the things I said about the band. Even though I explained multiple times that this is one of my favorite bands of all time, they released some of my favorite songs and favorite albums ever. The back end of their discography, or the second half of their career, I'm not really a big fan of. Actually, I think it's very disappointing compared to how great the first two albums were. A lot of you guys agreed, a lot of you guys disagreed with what I said, so I thought, why not make another video this time talking about my favorite albums by the band. That way I can make a more positive video, because believe me, I love these two albums to death. Actually, one of the main reasons why I'm so excited for the band's comeback is because of these two albums. I'm hoping, ever since Be Here Now, I've been hoping for another Oasis album that gives me the same feeling that these two albums gave me. Now, we're not only reviewing the albums, we're also deciding which of the two is the better album, mainly because this seems to be an ongoing debate. A lot of people think Definitely Maybe offers a more fun and enjoyable energy, and a lot of people think that the more mature songwriting and production you find on Morning Glory is more than enough to say that that album is an overall better record. It's a very difficult debate, mainly because both of these albums represent different sides of the band. The passion and energy they had on Definitely Maybe is amazing, and it offers some of the best songs from the 90s, but the overall maturity they enjoyed in Morning Glory kind of sees the band evolving into something more grand and more enjoyable for a large public, and that offers songs that work better in live performances. However, I must say that everything I'll be saying in this video is my own personal opinion and my personal opinion alone. So if you have your own, and I'm pretty sure you do, you can go ahead and leave it down below in the comments. I'll make sure to read it and give you my opinion on your opinion. Because it's their debut, the first album we'll be talking about today is Definitely Maybe, released in August of 1994. I can already tell you guys this is one of my favorite albums of all time. It has some of my favorite songs from the 90s and the overall Britpop genre, like Rock and Roll Star, Shaker Maker, Live Forever, Supersonic. We're talking about a stellar track list in this album, and the main reason why I tend to listen to this album over Morning Glory is mainly because of the flow of the album and the cohesive energy you find throughout the entire listen. While the production is a little rough around the edges, it feels like the guitar is a brick wall that you cannot overcome. It doesn't really allow you to pay attention to the other elements of the instrumentation, like percussion and bass playing. Most of the attention is either going to be on the guitar or on the lead vocals. That's kind of what makes this album so enjoyable in a way, because just like the punk genre, the messiness and chaotic nature of the instrumentation match the energy of what's being said in the lyrics, and Liam Gallagher's performance style that's very careless. It doesn't try to offer any sort of vocal proficiency. It just wants to pull out a melody that resonates with the song and the instrumentation, creating this chemistry and tug of war like competition to get your attention between the vocals and the lead guitar, and that offers a really good dynamic to most of the songs in this album. Actually, I think it's kind of impressive that this album is 52 minutes long, because most of the time you're enjoying yourself so much and you're having so much fun that it feels like less than 30 minutes. It's very well put together. It's a very tight album, and I feel like that's the main reason why most people would agree that this is the best release by the band, even if it once again has a lot of production issues. The recording of this album was an entire mess. I mean, they recorded this album about 3 times and they couldn't get the sound, because before being a worldwide phenomenon, Oasis was already quite famous in the UK for their live performances. Were very amazing and energetic, just like this album. But when they got into the studio, mainly because of production issues and not really having the best sound engineer, the band wasn't really able to capture the sound of their live performances in the studio, pretty similar to what happened with bands like the Stooges or maybe the Doors or even Led Zeppelin. They were running out of budget, so they basically took the last recording sessions and used the previous ones to layer the instrumentals here so they sound like finished songs. But I believe that the unfinished and amateurish nature of the album, because it's true that it sounds very unprofessional compared to the rest of the band's discography, is the main reason why the album resonates with its genre so much. Because at the time there was a lot of grunge bands, punk bands, and metal bands that were trying to reject rock and roll music and everything that it stood for, before. Rock and roll was already seen as a rebellion, so grunge music, metal music, and punk music was sort of like a rebellion to the rebellion. They were rejecting this idea of, just full enjoyment, and they were more focused on the sad side of things, on the aggressive side of things. Instead, Oasis was a breath of fresh air because the lyrics are very careless and fun and enjoyable, that are really relatable to your teenage years when you were just trying to have fun, not really focusing too much on the future and the consequences of your actions. The formula the band used to create this album feels like a happy accident, and that is the main reason why the album remains as one of my favorite releases of all time. Great album. Now, their second album, What's the Story Morning Glory, was released in October of 1995, a little over a year after the band's debut, and I have to say this is one of the most influential albums from the 90s. The impact it had on the 2000s with its soft rock music formula was simply massive. It's also one of the best-selling albums of all time. I think it's in the top 50 with over 10 million copies sold, and even though a lot of it was thanks to the success of the band's first album, a big part of it is also due to songs like Wonderwall, Don't Look Back in Anger, some might say, songs that are among the most popular tracks the band ever released. Now, in the previous album, Liam was the protagonist. In this one, I feel like it has Noel written all over the place. His songwriting ability was way more polished, his production techniques were way cleaner too. This album sounds way better than Definitely Maybe in terms of production. You can analyze every detail of the instrumentation without having to isolate the tracks or anything like that. It allows you to fully enjoy the entirety of the instrumentation, and while it takes away that rebellious and careless nature that the band's previous album had, it offers an opportunity to find new things to like about the band's sound. From the first song, Hello, you can see the improvement in performance, instrumentation, and overall sound. I feel like the songs here offer a much more clear identity of who Noel was as a musician, and even though it seems like Liam is not really all that happy, he doesn't sound too comfortable, it's even more obvious in tracks like She's Electric and Champagne Supernova. I just don't really feel like Liam was all that happy with the softer songwriting approach Noel had in this album. He performs really well. Liam Gallagher is one of my favorite performers of all time. I love the guy. I love his solo stuff too, but it's clear that he had a lot more fun performing the tracks in the previous albums, and when you look at his live set, whenever he performs live, he likes to perform the songs Indefinitely Maybe more than this one's, and I can see why. I believe it was a comment of someone asking me in the previous video if I thought we were going to get a new album because they were getting back together in 2025 for the UK concerts. I personally don't really think so, because ever since this album, they had a very different approach to music. They both wanted different things, and I think that is one of the main reasons why they had such a terrible relationship during the entirety of the 2000s live concerts and recording sessions. It's clear that they weren't satisfying each other's creative needs, and I think that the prelude to those issues are found in this album. I also feel like Noel was more focused on making bigger songs that offer a grand feeling, lyrics that are kind of metaphorical or philosophical. One of the best examples is in the track Champagne Supernova, the slowly walking down the hall faster than a cannonball line that I think it's horrible. And even though a lot of people say, oh, it's about ecstasy, it's about feeling lonely, it's about being in a big house and having no one there with you, and there's so many different interpretations to this line that I feel like it's obvious that it's not a good one. No one knows what the fuck he meant with this line. I don't really think we need to find the deeper meanings. I think we just need to accept it's not good.
Walking down the hall faster than a cannonball, what the fuck is all that about? And I should know because I wrote it and I haven't got a clue.
Also, I feel like the tracks here are a little more isolated. They don't feel as connected and as tight together as the songs from Definitely Maybe, and that for me is an issue. Back then it wasn't. I remember when I listened to this albums for the first time, I was 16 maybe, and the way I would listen to albums back then, it was I played the first minute or first 2 minutes of a song, and if I liked it, I moved on to the next track. And if you do it like that, Morning Glory is going to seem way more impressive. The production sounds cleaner, and you get to the climax quickly, plus the choruses are way better overall. But once you listen to the album as a whole, it's definitely a little tacky. The pace of the album feels kind of tanky, and you don't enjoy it as much as you enjoy Definitely Maybe, in my opinion, which leads me to my conclusion. I know that Morning Glory has some of the most recognizable and popular songs by the band, like Wonderwall, Roll With It, some might say, and Don't Look Back in Anger, but I also think that the songwriting and the production are quite unbalanced. As I said just a few minutes ago, the production in this album is way cleaner, but that's only in a few songs, in a few elements of those songs. For example, the track Champagne Supernova at first is produced beautifully. The vocals, the guitar playing, the percussion, everything works perfectly fine until you get to the climax of the song, and then you find the rest of the instrumentation sounding very clean and round, and then the guitar playing is sharp, loud, and distorted. It doesn't really mix that well, and you're left with an almost drone sounding guitar drowning the vocals in the sea of distortion that don't really allow you to enjoy every element of the instrumentation, and that happens very often in this album. I also feel like the chemistry that Noel and Liam had in the first album is pretty much lost in this one, and that made Be Here Now an even worse album. So while I still think that this is one of the best albums from the 90s, and even though it has those production issues, I feel like they're very little compared to the greatness of the album. When you're comparing it to Definitely Maybe, which in my opinion is one of the happiest accidents in the history of music, I have to say that Definitely Maybe is by far the better record. I mean, you do have the same production issues, but this time they applied to the entirety of the instrumentation, which makes it sound intentional. It wasn't. When you read about the story of the album, you'll find that there was a lot of problems with the recording, mixing, and engineering of the record. It wasn't supposed to be the legendary album it is. But the fact that it wasn't all that intentional doesn't really take away the fact that this is one of the best Britpop albums ever made, and actually one of the best albums ever made overall. Yes, Morning Glory offers a more mature approach to both songwriting and production, but I feel like the almost innocent nature of the songs in Definitely Maybe is what makes the album such an enjoyable listen. It feels very passionate and honest. It feels like the chemistry between Liam and Noel was at its peak, and I think in no other album in the band's discography, and actually even when you go to their solo stuff, Noel with the High Flying Birds and Liam with his own solo stuff, they never really managed to get another band that effectively replicated or even got close to the sound they achieved in this album, and that is exactly the reason why I think that out of the two albums we're talking about today, this is by far the best one. This album is a celebration of rock music released in a time where grunge music, metal music, and punk were at peak popularity. Those genres that kind of feel like they're constantly complaining and they're always sad and they always have something against society. Having an album like Definitely Maybe, a record that is just basically them enjoying life, it's very refreshing and it feels very good, and that is the main reason why it's not only the best album out of the two, but one of the best albums ever released. And that is going to be it for today's video, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed. If you did, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other videos that I upload. If you want me to talk about any other topics related to music, if you want me to check out a song, album, or artist, go ahead and leave it down below as well, and I'll make sure to read it and fulfill your request as soon as I can. Once again, hope that you guys enjoyed, and I hope that I can see you soon with a new video. But until then, bye.